9 machines, 1 logging site, and a scale that climbs from a 3,000-kilogram processing head to a 52-ton flagship, built to handle timber nothing smaller can touch. We'll walk the whole chain in order: cutting, delimbing, skidding, forwarding, mulching, grinding, and finally, the biggest purpose-built processor Tigercat makes. By the end, you'll know exactly which machine does which job on a real logging site, and why the last one in this lineup dwarfs everything that came before it. Every log in this lineup starts here, at the smallest, lightest piece of hardware in the show. The Waratah HTH623C LP isn't a standalone machine. It's an attachment, a processing head that rides on the end of an excavator boom and does the actual cutting, delimbing, and bucking of a felled tree into log lengths. Waratah built the LP version specifically for low-clearance roadside work, where crews process logs under power lines or beneath a forest canopy. A taller head simply won't fit under. It's the unglamorous end of the chain that makes every other machine on this list possible. At 3,140 kilograms, about 6,923 pounds, the HTH623C LP is light enough that a mid-size excavator can swing it all day without straining its hydraulics. That low weight is deliberate. Waratah shaved mass out of the frame, specifically to keep the head balanced on a low-profile carrier working tight roadside corridors. The head handle stems up to roughly 24 inches across, feeding them through steel rollers, while a single saw unit bucks each log to a programmed length. Feed speed and knife geometry matter more here than raw power, because the entire point of a roadside head is throughput. Strip a tree, cut it to length, drop it, move to the next one. Look at the curved steel arms wrapped around the front of the head. Those are the delimbing knives, and they're doing more work than anything else on this machine. As a stem feeds through, the knives close around the trunk and strip branches clean in a single pass, shaped so bark and limbs peel away without gouging the wood underneath. Waratah's engineers spent years refining that knife profile alone, because a head that damages the log on its way through loses money on every stem. One step up in weight, one step up in job description. The Tigercat 890E is a knuckle boom loader, a trailer-mounted crane with a grapple on the end, parked at the log landing where it sorts, stacks, and loads logs onto trucks headed for the mill. Tigercat introduced the D series to replace the aging 234 line, giving loggers a stronger boom and a cab that rotates a full 360 degrees, so the operator never loses sight of the load. It doesn't cut a single tree. Its entire job is moving what other machines already cut. The 250D weighs around 33,350 pounds, close to 15.1 metric tons, which puts it in the mid-size loader class, big enough to swing full-length logs, small enough to tow between landings on a lowboy trailer. Its knuckle boom design, a jointed arm that folds at a second elbow partway up the mast, gives it reach a straight boom loader can't match in the same footprint, letting the operator pick a log from a pile 20-some feet away without repositioning the whole machine. Tigercat pairs it with a hydraulically rotating grapple, so a log picked up sideways can be spun into line with the truck bed in one motion instead of 3. Parked next to a person, the 250D's mast alone stands taller than a 2-story house once fully extended, and the boom reaches out over 40 feet from the base. It works from a fixed spot on a trailer bed, its whole footprint smaller than the pile of logs it's sorting beside it. The Raptor 500 doesn't cut trees down so much as erase them. Prinoth built this tracked carrier for one job, driving straight through standing brush, saplings, and small trees, with a rotating drum of carbide teeth mounted on the front, turning everything in its path into mulch on the forest floor. It's the machine crews call in before a harvest even starts, clearing understory and right-of-way corridors that would otherwise slow every other piece of equipment on this list. Where a feller buncher or a harvester deals with individual merchantable stems, the Raptor 500 deals with everything else. At 23.25 tons, the Raptor 500 sits in the midweight class for tracked mulchers, heavy enough to carry a full-size mulching head and still keep enough ground pressure spread across its tracks to cross soft, uneven forest floor without sinking. Prinoth builds the carrier with a low center of gravity, specifically because mulching work often happens on slopes that would tip a taller machine. This one is designed to work sideways on a grade that would stop a standard excavator cold. The rotary head up front spins fast enough to shred a 6-inch sapling in under a second, and operators can swap head widths depending on whether they're clearing a narrow pipeline corridor or a wide fire line. That drum on the front is the whole reason this machine exists. Dozens of carbide-tipped teeth are bolted around its circumference, replaceable individually, so a crew can swap a worn tooth in the field instead of hauling the whole head back to a shop. The drum housing is reinforced steel, built to take direct hits from rocks and stumps buried in the brush without cracking. Because out here, what's underneath the vegetation is usually the bigger threat than the vegetation itself. Once a tree is down, something has to drag it out of the woods, and that's the entire purpose of a skidder. The John Deere 948L2 is a grapple skidder, a rubber-tired machine with a hydraulic clamp on the back that grabs a bundle of felled logs and hauls them from the stump to the landing, where a loader like the 250D takes over. Deere's L2 generation updated the line with a stronger frame and improved hydraulics over the original L series, aimed at crews running longer skid distances on rougher ground. It's not glamorous work, but it's the bottleneck of the whole operation. A slow skidder stalls every machine behind it. The 948L2 carries an operating weight of 22,484 kilograms, about 49,570 pounds, most of that mass concentrated low and rearward, to counterbalance a full grapple load dragging behind it. That distribution matters, because a skidder pulling logs uphill generates enormous forward tipping force at the grapple arch, and without enough weight over the rear axle, the front tires simply lift off the ground. Deere fits it with an articulated frame, letting the machine bend in the middle to follow uneven terrain and turn sharply between trees without the wide swing radius a rigid frame would need. A skilled operator can grab a bundle of 6 or 8 logs in one pass and skid the whole load out in a single trip. Fully loaded with logs trailing behind the grapple, the 948L2's working footprint stretches well past 30 feet, though the bare machine itself runs closer to 26 feet nose to tail and stands around 11 feet at the cab roof, tall enough that the operator sits above most of the brush being pushed aside on the trail in. This is where the lineup starts doing the actual felling and processing in one machine. The Ponsse Scorpion King is a wheeled harvester, built around a pivoting cab and boom system Ponsse calls the active frame, which lets the whole upper structure lean and rotate independently of the wheels, so the head stays aimed at the tree even when the chassis is tilted on a slope. Finland's forestry industry has spent decades refining this single machine approach. One operator, one cab, felling, delimbing, and bucking a tree to length in seconds, without ever leaving the seat. The Scorpion King is Ponsse's flagship expression of that idea. It weighs 22,500 kilograms, close to 49,600 pounds, and runs on an 8-wheel drive chassis Ponsse, designed to spread that weight evenly enough to minimize soil compaction, a real concern for forestry operations, working the same ground season after season. Power comes from a 280 horsepower Mercedes-Benz engine, enough to run the harvester head saw, delimb knives, and feed rollers simultaneously, while still driving the machine over stumps and ruts. The boom-mounted head can take a tree from standing timber to a stack of measured logs in roughly the time it takes to read this sentence, with onboard computers tracking length and diameter on every stem to optimize cutting for whatever the mill is paying for that week. Watch the cab on this machine, and you'll notice it doesn't sit rigid on the chassis. It tilts, rotates, and levels itself independently of the wheels underneath. That's the active frame system, and it's the real engineering signature of the Scorpion King. On a side slope that would force another harvester to work at an awkward angle, this cab keeps the operator level and the boom's reach consistent, which is a bigger deal than it sounds. An unlevel head means uneven cuts and wasted timber. A harvester cuts the logs, a forwarder carries them out, fully loaded, off the ground, all the way to the roadside landing. The Ponsse Bison is built for exactly that second half of the job, walking on wheels through the same cut-over ground the harvester just worked, picking up processed logs with a loader crane, and stacking them into its own bunk instead of dragging them like a skidder does. Keeping logs off the dirt matters for a mill buyer. A clean log is worth more than one that's been scraped through mud for half a mile. The Bison carries a machine weight of 22,600 kilograms, but is rated to load 16,000 kilograms of timber on top of that, which means a fully loaded Bison is hauling nearly as much weight in logs as the machine itself weighs empty. Ponsse rates its tractive force at 200 kilonewtons. the raw pulling power that lets a loaded forwarder climb out of a cut block on wet, soft ground, where a wheeled truck would simply spin its tires and stop. The bogie-mounted wheel sets distribute that load across a wide footprint specifically to limit rutting, since a forwarder makes the same trip back and forth dozens of times over a single harvest and repeated damage to the same ground compounds fast. Loaded to capacity, the Bison's bunk stretches logs well beyond the length of the chassis itself, and the loader crane folded down for transport still rises taller than the cab roof, enough that a person standing beside it barely reaches the top of the rear tires. Everything below this point in the lineup gets noticeably heavier, and the Tigercat 890E is where that jump starts. It's a track-mounted feller buncher, a machine that drives up to a standing tree, clamps it with a felling head, severs it at the base in seconds, and holds several trees upright in an accumulating arm before laying the whole bundle down at once. That accumulating step is the entire point. Instead of felling one tree and driving to the next, the 892E can grab and hold 3, 4, sometimes 5 stems before setting them down together, cutting the number of trips across the site dramatically. At 52,000 pounds, roughly 23.6 tons, the 892E needs tracks rather than wheels to spread that weight across soft or uneven ground without sinking. A wheeled machine this heavy would simply bog down in the wet clay common to a lot of harvest sites. Tigercat builds the 892E around a heavy-duty undercarriage matched to a felling head capable of shearing or sawing through large-diameter hardwood in one pass, and the boom geometry is tuned for high-production stem counts rather than reach, since a buncher spends its whole shift working close to the machine rather than extending far out. Production-focused crews run these in clear-cut or shelterwood operations, where the goal is maximum tonnage felled per hour, not selective single-tree harvesting. The head at the front of this machine is doing something a chainsaw crew never could, gripping multiple trees at once. Hydraulic arms hold each felled stem upright against the head as the next tree is cut, stacking a bundle of standing timber in the machine's grip before it ever sets a single log down. It's the mechanical equivalent of a lumberjack somehow holding 4 trees under one arm while cutting a 5th, the kind of throughput that turns a slow tree-by-tree job into a continuous production line. This one doesn't fell, skid, or forward anything. It destroys what's left over. The Vermeer HG6000TX is a self-propelled horizontal tub grinder, a machine that takes the slash, tops, and waste wood every other piece of equipment in this lineup leaves behind, and grinds it into mulch or biomass fuel chips. Vermeer built the horizontal feed design specifically to handle bulky, irregular material, stumps, root balls, whole treetops, that a vertical grinder's narrower opening would choke on. The HG6000TX weighs 67,000 pounds, about 30.4 tons, most of that mass anchoring a massive rotating drum, studded with hammers or knives that shred material fed in through the horizontal tub at the front. Being self-propelled rather than trailer-towed means the machine can crawl its own way across a slash pile, or landing, without needing a separate carrier to reposition it between piles. A real time saver on a large clearing job, where waste wood is scattered across acres rather than stacked in one spot. Output capacity on a machine this size runs into hundreds of tons of ground material per hour under the right conditions, feeding directly into a truck or conveyor for transport to a biomass plant or mulch buyer. The tub opening alone is wide enough to swallow a stump section a person couldn't wrap both arms around, and the discharge conveyor arcing off the side reaches well over a person's head, loading a waiting truck without the grinder ever needing to reposition. And here's the machine the whole lineup was building toward. The Tigercat 890E is the company's largest purpose-built forestry carrier, a dedicated processor chassis, designed from the ground up rather than adapted from an excavator base, built to run the biggest, heaviest processing heads in Tigercat's lineup, on the toughest, largest diameter timber a logging site can produce. Where a converted excavator flexes and compromises to do processing work, the 890E's frame, hydraulics, and cab were engineered specifically for it. Nothing borrowed, nothing adapted. The 890E weighs 47,900 kilograms, 105,600 pounds, right around 52.8 US tons, making it comfortably the heaviest machine in this entire lineup, and squarely in the 60-ton class loggers refer to when they talk about flagship processors. That mass exists for a reason, A processing head running full delimb and bucking cycles on large hardwood stems generates enormous reactive force back through the boom, and a lighter carrier would rock, lose stability, or simply fail to hold the head steady enough for accurate cuts. Tigercat built the 890E's undercarriage and boom specifically to absorb that load hour after hour, shift after shift, on sites where the timber itself is too large for a smaller processor to handle economically. Next to a person standing at its tracks, the 890E's cab sits roughly the height of a single-story roofline, and the boom, fully extended with a processing head on the end, reaches out further than most people would throw a football, a scale that makes every other machine in this lineup look almost delicate by comparison. Look at where the boom pivots into the chassis, and you're looking at the single most reinforced joint on any machine in this lineup. That pivot has to transmit the full reactive force of a processing head shearing through hardwood, over and over, for years, without developing play or cracking under fatigue. Tigercat overbuilt that mount specifically because it's the point every other forestry carrier in this class tends to fail first. The flagship's whole reputation rests on that one joint holding.